clappy noises.
Man, that cut off quick.
Well, that's how it goes. Hey, everybody, I am Jeff from Fuller Embroidery Works and the Embroidery Nerd, and I am joined by Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios, as well as the Embroidery Nerd. And today we are talking about exploring different ways to manufacture patches, I do believe.
Correct.
Well, it's good. I read the title before I entered the studio.
Yeah, getting a lot of questions lately regarding the different processes of creating patches, namely with your embroidery machine. So thought it might be a good idea to just kind of go through the many different ways that you can possibly do that. So,
all right, but wait. Let's check in with the comments of the people of the day. We have Cindy King joining us from Odessa, Texas. Hello. We have the Sassy Subber joining us from sunny Florida, which is probably dark over there by now. Just saying, it might be dark outside. We have Doug joining us as well, I believe from California. And this is the time I would get that wrong, right?
No, California, definitely. SoCal.
It's SoCal. All right. Well, I tried. Promise. We have Minnesota Custom Made joining us from north central Minnesota. I could have got that one wrong too. And let's see here. We have Walker Woods Creation from Ohio joining us. Miss Letty Walker. Going down, we have Studio 23 joining us from Liberal, Oregon. We have Mr. Joe Kramer checking in. Hello. And we have Craft Life from Virginia. Brian checking in as well. All right. So, oh, wait. We have Dolores, too. There we go. Dolores checking in from Atlanta. And I think I got it all. No, I don't. We're going to get them all. We have DJ Kev joining from North Carolina. Awesome. And we have Bill Lubbers joining us from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Welcome, Bill. Identity Threads. All right. So, Justin, let's talk patches. You said that you've actually been getting a lot of questions on patches recently. So why don't you shoot out with the kind of questions that you're getting?
Yeah. So, mainly just like, some people that haven't really dealt with patches, with majority of their work being direct embroidery. But we, using an embroidery machine, there's different processes that you can do. And mainly it's how you apply the edge to it, whether you're going to use a traditional marrow machine edge, which is a completely different process in itself, next to using a faux marrowed edge, similar to the fuller border that Jeff created, just a regular satin stitch edge, but how it's really applied to the garment, how it's finished, are basically the different things that you can do as far as patches. So, but a patch is traditionally a design where the background is going to be some type of twill material, and then you have the border itself that's going to be your finished edge around the edge. So
as Justin's screen picks it up as the black background and put the hat on top of it. Boom.
So I would say starting with the most basic way of using your embroidery machine for a patch would be what I call just run-of-the-mill sew and cut. So that's where you're going to just hoop up the twill material itself with some backing to it. And you're just going to completely sew out the patch with the border and all. And then after the fact, you'll cut those out. I would say that's the most basic process that you're going to have with an embroidery machine. Whether it's 100% filled patch where it's complete stitches, or if you're going to have that twill background showing through like that, probably black wasn't the right color to use with a black shirt behind me. But yeah, it's where it's like I said, it's good to use the twills and whatnot that are made for patches, just because you have a nice stable fabric to sew on, even if the patch is going to be 100% stitches or not. Um, but basically, you would sew the complete patch out, and here we go again. It's disappearing. Sew the complete patch out, and then you're not going to see this, are you?
Nope.
Why? It's weird.
Justin's like, I'm gonna grab examples.
It's weird that it's picking up when it's not even green. Um, yeah, that's a little hard to see. So I have here the edge of the patch shown that I'm just cutting around the edge of the actual patch itself to trim it out. So, like I said, that's going to be probably your best bet as far as the easiest process on your embroidery machine. Uh, a
I don't
few
know. I mean, it really comes down to how much time you want to spend finishing the patch, right? Because
exactly.
you have to sit down there, you have to cut out that patch 1,800 times, and with
Hmm.
that type of method, you generally want to do something to heat seal that edge, which usually involves either a I don't know what you use, Justin. You guys use a lighter or a flame?
Yeah.
Yep, lighter. Or like a soldering iron, the barrel of a soldering iron, where you're going around that edge of that twill and you're basically just kind of melting that polyester fabric back towards the stitches. Sometimes you can burn the stitches. It's what I like to say is when you run your sash of patches, run a few very small blank, just like satin stitches alongside the twill,
Hmm.
and practice your cut and burn a little bit, like 4 or 5 times before you move on to the patch.
Right.
And get into the groove of burning that edge so that you get the feel of it. You're not going to burn as many threads as you go through. A lot of times, though, you pop one up, you can hit it with the heat a little bit, melt it, push it back down. But
Another con with this one too is you really, if you are using this process, you're more than likely going to want to use the same or a very similar thread color for that border as the twill is going to be.
yep,
If you have high contrast and you have, like, say, white twill with a black border, because you are just trimming as close as you can to that outer border, you're still going to have that halo of that color of the twill that is apparent, even if you do kind of finish it with a hot knife or a flame. There's a good chance that you're going to see that twill color still sticking out around those edges. So high contrast as far as the twill and the border aren't probably a good idea to use this method either.
yep,
Another pro, Jeff mentioned, running it on a sash. If your machines are running up set up on sashes, like if you've ever seen those videos that Matt has put out when he's doing just a mass run of patches all at once, this technique is good for that, where you're doing multiple sews in a single hooping, whether it's hooping big jacket back hoops with your twill, or if you have your sash set up. This method is going to probably be your best bet because you are just running all the patches at once and you're going to finish them later.
yep. And it will really depend ultimately on how long it takes you to do a patch. I've found that when I sit there and I do these, especially when I do hot cut, it has to be a really complicated shape, and then that's when I'm going to actually sit and spend my time to cut it out. If it's a simpler shape, I'd rather cut it out without having to worry about the border at all, and then apply the border on after the fact with like a shower curtain or something, so that it's pretty simple. You hoop it up, you applique it down, you pop it out, and away you go.
Right.
So it really depends on how much extra processing time you want to spend after the fact. Some people would really prefer um, to have the machine running on something else and cut it out by hand, or would you prefer to cut it out ahead of time and applique it down? And it really comes down to which process. Like I think there's 5 different ways to make a patch, and it really comes down to which process is going to be best for you. And I use a different one depending on the type of patch I'm making.
Exactly.
Size, type, shape, it all plays in there. So we do have a question here. I'm trying to keep up with the comments, but it only shows like 3 on my screen at a time. And it is from Steven, joining us from Michigan. What type of twill do you recommend? So if you're running like a black or a white twill, I recommend you using the Embroidery Nerd twill. It's one that we found that we actually sell. We buy it in a massive roll, and get it slit down to an appropriate width. It makes it a lot easier to handle, and then we sell that kind of by the yard. Um, that's probably one of the best twills that I've found for making patches. Sublimates really well. If you're going for colors, an old Twilly is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It comes with stabilizer already adhered to it, so they laminate it ahead of time. I don't necessarily like that one for hot cutting, but most of the applique methods, that stuff comes out really nice. Fabric Wholesale Direct has it's a nice twill. It's just a little thin. So like it's the type of twill that if you were making a white patch and you put a black stabilizer behind it, you would know that you put a black stabilizer behind it. You'd see that through there. It's just a little thin, but that twill hot cuts really, really nice. And so that's one that I would actually recommend for the hot cutting. So let's see here. I've used Heat Away to hoop with pre-cut twill. Yep, that works as well. Laser cut. I really like doing the laser cut method and appliquing them down. And really, so like Justin said, with the initial, in the beginning, the simplest process is probably, you sew it out and you cut it out with scissors and you melt it back.
Right.
And so the applique process that we're talking about here is just it's a little bit different of a process, and it comes down to how your file is set up. So with a hot cut patch, you can pretty much just offset a satin border on there and run it on your machine and cut it out. With an applique style, now you're looking at doing it like an actual applique. And we'll go ahead and we'll spotlight this here. I got it, Justin.
Okay.
And so with an applique style patch like Justin has here, this is going to run in three. I want to say you got 3 sets, or you got a cut line in there, Justin.
Yeah, I also have a cut line just so we can kind of explain the different within the applique category. There's a couple of different versions of applique as well.
Yep.
If you quickly run through this, you're going to see that the first line was a placement line. So that placement line, let's start from the beginning. This placement line.
Can you turn on True View too, Justin?
Yeah, I just did.
All
right. So this placement line that you see here, that's going to signify that's going to be the placement on whatever you decide to sew this onto is going to be your placement for the material. So you could either, if you do what's called an in hoop cut, that's when you would actually cut a piece of twill that's slightly larger than what your finished patch is going to be. And what you're going to do is you're going to have this placement line sew. You're going to have a stop in your color sequence. So the machine will stop at this point. And if you were to have a piece of, say, twill material, yay big, say,
about like that.
About we'll like that, yeah. You would place that just over your placement line only. And then what that's going to do is you're going to give you time for you to maybe spray a little adhesive on the back of this twill, lay it over the placement line, making sure that there's plenty excess around the edges. And the next thing that's going to sew is going to be what's called your cut line. So your placement line is there. You place the twill over. The next is going to be your cut line. So your cut line is going to be the exact placement of the running stitch of your placement line. But again, that's going to sew, and then you're going to have another stop in your sequence. So after this sews, that gives you basically a line that once the material is tacked down in your hoop, you're going to go ahead and grab your scissors and you're going to closely cut around this edge as close as possible. So with the applique technique, you're taking out the chance of your twill being seen on the outside of that border because you're not cutting it after the finished patch is done. You're now cutting that the edge of your material before the outer finished border is going to be sewn. So after you manually cut around that edge, the next, what I usually do is go ahead and do another color change where it simply does a quick tack down of the material. Um, I usually do this and do another stop there, just so you have one more chance that if you see there might be one area, say this corner, you can see where your tack down stitches are, giving you a little bit more width, showing you where that outer border is going to be sewing over to finish it. And say you see one area that may have a little bit too much material, that you can kind of get in there and trim again if needed. And then the last piece of the puzzle here is going to be your outer border, and that's going to sew and it's going to finish that edge. And since your cut line is, usually a millimeter or two, depending how wide your finished border is inside of that border, that finished border, whether it be a faux marrow border like you see here or a satin stitch, it's going to hide any um, unfinished edge and going to give you a cleaner patch border. Another applique way of doing it would be to pre-cut your material. That's when you actually won't need a second cut line. Whether you use a laser and you pre-cut your patch material, another way of doing it is you could actually just sew this one line out multiple times on your twill, and that's going to give you just a cut line where you can take that material, cut them all out, um, and that way you have an exact size and shape. Laser cutter, a plotter cutter, any pre-cut that you do, or you could even order pre-cut pieces from places like Stalls and whatnot. So it's going to be the same process as far as how you apply it. The only difference is you would do the placement line first. You wouldn't need the second cut line, because instead of that cut line, all you're doing is taking that pre-cut material, sprayed the little adhesive that you have, and you're going to use this and place that material exactly on that placement line. I'm going to delete this one out here. Yeah, you're going to use that placement line edge and tack down that material right along that edge. So there's not going to be any in hoop cutting at all needed. And then it'll be the same process where run your tack down stitch first, and then finally your final border. Nope.
Almost. So
Nope.
close.
Nope.
So close. Okay. That one. There we go. All right. So that's going to be your applique method. And really, when you're doing the applique method, there's about 4 different materials you can do that on. There's like a Badge Master type film, heavy water soluble, that you can do that on.
Mm-hmm.
That works really well. I mean, I think it was developed for this, but it does perforate out. So if you're trying to do a large number of these in a hoop, it's going to perforate around the outside edge, and it could cause some structural issues in the hoop. The same with like a shower curtain or a heat away material, because they're films and they're not really like a woven material. They all have that capability or possibility of, if you're trying to do multiple of them in a hoop, that it can perforate out all the way around, and you're going to have structural and stability issues, right, and possibly some shifting when you're trying to do these in like in a large production.
And if you are using a material like that where it is a soluble backing, whether it be water or heat away, you'll want to do the placement line and the tack down only, just to get the twill in place. You're going to want to embroider all your inside elements, whether it's just words or logo or whatever, and then you're going to want to do that finished border last, because that finished border is going to really where it perforates that material and starts cutting out of that material altogether. So again, con being that it's not a good idea to do these in mass when you are doing this type of applique type patch with those soluble materials, because once you start getting multiples in there, the integrity of your hooped material is just going to go to the wayside.
Yep. So the exception to that, Justin's going to throw shit at me. The exception to that is there's that fibrous water soluble fibrous water soluble material, which actually it works more like a traditional cutaway or a fabric because it is
Mhm.
the way it is laid, and so it doesn't perforate out. You do have to go through and you have to clean the edges and you have to cut it out actually,
Mhm.
and it's used a lot for freestanding lace. So that one works really well.
Gotcha.
The other way that you can kind of get around uh, the shifting and stuff is to run your entire patch. So let's say you run a full sash of cotton like you would hot cut,
Mhm.
everything but the satin border, and you're just putting a run stitch cut line
Right.
around the outside edge and an inset run stitch on that as well, because you want to make sure that you're holding your twill and your stabilizer together when you actually cut it out.
Uh-huh.
Then you unhoop that, you cut out all of your shapes, and then you can start appliquing them into a larger hoop. And the only thing that's really pulling or distorting is just going to be that satin border and not any of the inner elements, and you're going to get less shifting.
Exactly. So instead of just the laser cut or hand cut piece of twill, you're going to be embroidering that whole thing all together. Your cut edge, you're not going to have to be too careful with like the original way we were talking about cutting around the edge of a finished patch. Um, you're sewing the whole patch out, and then you're going to use that as the applique piece. So again, on that whatever soluble backing you're doing, all you're doing is running a placement line, placing your full finished patch there, and then it'll run the outer border. So,
And I've found with that when you do that and you're not going to be super accurate with your cutting, that you really want to go heavy on the underlay,
mm,
because anywhere that you're not accurate, that heavy underlay is going to help firm up that edge, and so it won't look thin. Now, when I cut these on my laser, and I'll do the entire patch, and then I'll slide it under a piece of cardboard to line it up and cut it on the laser, and that does a really nice job. But um, with that, I get a very consistent edge,
right,
and so I don't have to go as heavy on the underlay because it's going to wrap really nice, and it's gonna produce a really nice clean edge. It's going to be uniform all the way around.
right,
And when you're hand cutting, sometimes you don't get that. So going heavier on the edge run underlay, maybe a double zigzag, is really setting up that edge. Making sure sometimes I'll even do an extra run underneath there as well, just to make sure I've really set that edge so that when I do embroider that final border on, that I'm not going to get any. And I start removing the material because you have to remove the water soluble or the heat away, that I'm not going to get, a really thin edge up here that's loose and loopy, and I'm going to get a really tight, thick edge on this end.
gotcha, gotcha. And sewing the full patch out and having that cut line and not doing a finished edge, that's where the process of a true marrowed edge, and that's when actually you would take that unfinished patch, take it to your marrow machine, and hopefully it's in a shape that's not too crazy with all these nooks and crannies in it. That's why you typically see, when you see marrowed edges, it's the traditional rectangle, square, circle, um, or maybe just the military shield shape, where the marrowed edge is easily done on a marrow machine, instead of something that's contoured to a really crazy shape, that's a little bit more difficult to do on a marrow machine.
Yeah, convex is out, concave.
Mhm.
Concave is a little more difficult on a marrow, and especially when you have inside corners, it's
Right,
really hard to turn a corner on the inside on a marrow machine.
exactly.
But the double line where you're doing a run stitch for a cut and you're insetting as well, that's really important to do on a marrow machine as you're running it. You want to make sure that that's going to be under the border and hopefully the same color as your finished border.
Right.
But that also ensures that your twill and your stabilizer are going to be married to each other when that presser foot starts grabbing it and pulling it through.
Mhm.
You're not going to get as much shifting on there. I'm a big fan of fusing it whenever you can. If you can fuse your stabilizer and your twill together, that's always going to help arrest movement. But when you can't, sometimes just an extra run stitch around the outside edge can work a lot of wonders.
And the traditional marrow technique is going to be your cleanest edge out of all of these techniques altogether, because the nature of a marrow, what type of machine is that called again?
It's a the so the
Because
it's a
marrow
overlock.
is a brand.
Yeah, Marrow is a brand, but it's an overlock machine, and
Yes. Okay.
it creates a patch edge, so it's actually wrapping around. It's got a
Yeah, so it's wrapping around versus just doing a satin edge. This is actually wrapping around the entire edge of the marrow. So contrast colors to the twill and the outer border, it's not a problem because it's going to completely cover that edge. So that's
yep, and you can get like your because you've got an upper looper and a low, or not an upper looper. You got your needle thread, you got your upper looper which wraps the thread around, and then you've got your lower looper which is basically like your bobbin thread almost. And so your needle thread can be a different color too, so you can get variations going into that. Um, but it's very fast. This is what I like to say about Marrow. It's very fast and anyone can do it, but it is hard to do it well
it's
because
definitely a larger learning curve.
it is because any mistake is magnified by the speed.
Yeah.
So when you're starting out, a servo motor that you can really tone it down helps a lot. Needle positioner, I never really knew how nice a needle positioner was until Matt put one on my machine, and it's very helpful. A servo and a needle positioner makes a huge difference when you're
Right.
trying to learn how to run one.
And that's where you, just like anything else, you kind of outweigh, as an embroiderer, do you want another piece of material, I mean another piece of machinery in your shop? What's the volume that you're doing of patches? If you get a patch order every few weeks, every few months, and it's an average of 20 to 30 patches, I wouldn't say that you're going to want to take up space, have the learning curve of knowing how to do it. The expense of the machine doesn't really make sense. If you are getting into a lot of patches, especially when it comes to if you're doing a lot of sports teams, military, something like that, and you're doing them on a daily basis, you get good at it. It's fast. It's the cleanest edge out of all these processes. So, again, kind of weighing what your need is as far as patches.
Yep.
Um,
Scaling your production, right? It's I personally feel like low run patches are where the money is at, because if you can hit under um, 50,
yeah,
50 or less on a single order, a lot of shops overseas won't touch those, so you can be competitive in your pricing.
right.
You start going into those higher numbers, and people just expect it to be cheaper because you can outsource it for cheaper.
Right.
So I always try to hit the lower numbers. I know Matt would do a lot higher numbers when he was doing it, but he also scaled his production. So he had a Marrow machine, he had a CCD laser, and so his cutting process was automated. His sewing process was, we all do embroidery, so we all know what the sewing process is.
Right.
But his finishing process got a lot easier. And so I see Doug's here says I picked one up for really cheap. I couldn't imagine spending about $4,500 for a new one. So they're a pricey bit of kit, but they last forever. I want to say mine was built in 1983,
Oh,
and it's
wow.
the same year that I was born. So we've got a bond, and it works better than I do. But we have a bond.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, those as embroidery houses in the U.S. typically, unless you are geared out like Matt was pretty much geared to pretty much produce patches, um, but the lower than 50 range is where you're going to really make your money, and be able to do any of these processes easily, whether you have a single head or a multi head, um, and still make a profit. Otherwise, you're better off just kind of sending them off overseas if you are getting into the hundreds of patches, and you're not equipped to do that type of volume.
Right. I mean, essentially, it's a left chest logo, and they want 100 of them,
Right.
and they want to pay $2 a piece.
Exactly.
Like you're throwing a border on it, and it's a left chest logo, and it does take more time to produce.
Yeah, and
Um,
any of these processes are going to make more time because you figure you're just hooping a shirt once, you're trimming the back after it's done. With these, with appliques, you're doing some type of cutting before or in the hoop. So there's that process. There's going to be the finishing process of the border. If it's the run and cut, you're cutting around and you're flaming that edge. Um, If not, you're doing some type of soluble uh, backing that you're running them on, whether you're going to have to get some water involved or some heat involved to get that out. So yeah, there's it's one of those. Not only is it the look that's real popular right now,
It's
patches on
good for
hat,
places you can't hoop.
yeah, patches on hats are very very popular. That in itself is a whole other beast that could probably be a whole other show as far as trying to use your embroidery machine to sew patches on. Um, but
I know we've done that in the past. It was
yeah,
actually
yeah,
fairly
we have.
entertaining.
Um, but yeah, saving on stitch count is another reason why. Not only the look of the marrowed edge or the faux marrow edge, but saving on stitch count where you have a large area that you can just do the twill background to it. Um, it's a cool look too. So yeah, there's some pros and cons as far as the process itself, but yeah, there's using your embroidery machine. There's definitely different options that you can do um, as far as the creation of the patch itself.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that takes us pretty close to the closing of this episode. This is a topic that we could go on more if we had more machinery set up in our backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
All I have is a 6-needle Tajima. And it doesn't run at the moment, but it sure hangs on the wall nice. But with that, special announcements coming up. We still have some copies of the book Punch by Bonnie Nielsen. We're hoping to have her on again here shortly. Probably won't be for another month or two, but we're looking to have her back on. We're also going to have a interview with Britta coming up. Britta from ZSK Machines. She's going to come on, and I believe we're going to be talking a little bit about Base Pack software, which is the software that they sell, the ZSK sells, and it's integrated with the machine. You can join us with our conversational stuff on following links.embroidered.com. You can find us on Discord. You can join the conversation there, or you can join the Facebook group. We're over 10,000 strong. Keep going here, Justin. Coming up in the end of September, I'll be going up to SPSI. They're going to be having a event up there. So I'll be going up there, and then I may or may not be going down to the Impressions Expo in Dallas as well. So you'll be able to see some of your favorite nerds out on the road. I'm trying to convince Justin to come too, but
Possible.
I think he's still going to do Long Beach next year, right?
For sure, Long Beach, yes.
For sure, Long
In
Beach.
the
So,
works, planning some classes there, so hopefully it'll be multiple classes in Long Beach. That's kind of my home one because it's a little bit closer to my area. Um, but yeah, if you're watching this live now and you have questions or something maybe coming up of what we discussed today, if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube or our Facebook group, or Facebook page, hit us up on the group or in Discord. Let us know if there's any questions that for anything that we went over today. Maybe it's something that Jeff or I could find a second to jump on a machine and get some footage of something specific if you're not really understanding. I know sometimes it's hard to grasp exactly how it's done on the machine just by showing the digitizing and talking about it. But for sure, let us know, and we'll see if we can either find some other videos that we've done before, because I know we have some in our archive, or if we could do something for you on a machine and show you how it's done. So let us know.
awesome. All right. Well, with that, I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works, and that is Justin Arminta from JA Digitizing Studios, and we are both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night, everyone.